Efendim Stüdyo Avrupa ile karşınızdayım. Ben Sami Altınkaya. Avrupa'nın siyasi ve ekonomi gündemi, tabii ki bu gündemin Türkiye ve dünya etkilerini konuştuğumuz programımız. Bugünkü programımızda özellikle sizler için bazı haber başlıkları derledim. Bunlardan ilki tabii ki ülkeler arasındaki giriş çıkışlar ve pasaportlar. Pasaportlar ne kadar önemli, ülkelerin diğer ülkelerle olan giriş çıkışlarında son derece önemli. Baktığımız zaman dünya üzerinde pasaportlarda Hindistan pasaportunun dünyanın ülke pasaportları arasında en çok geçerli olan pasaport Hindistan pasaportu. Aynı şekilde 193 ülkeye giriş pasaportu veren Singapur pasaportu. Ama öncelikle bu pasaportlarla ilgili tabii ki ülkelerin nüfusları. Çünkü kalabalık bir ülkesiniz, dünya üzerinde en geniş nüfusa sahipsiniz. Hindistan'dan bahsediyoruz. Hindistan'ın 1.463.000 ya da 1.464.000 nüfusu var. İkinci sırada Çin 1.416.000 nüfusu var. Yine Asya ülkeleri, Amerika Birleşik Devletleri 350 milyona yakın bir nüfusu var. Yine Endonezya'nın 285 milyon nüfusu, Pakistan'ın 255 bin nüfusu. Bakın Asya'dan Avrupa'ya doğru geldikçe nüfusta bir azalma söz konusu. Bundan sonraki grafiğimizde de ülke ziyaretçi sayılarına bir bakalım isterseniz. Şimdi Türkiye özellikle Avrupa Birliği ülkelerinden ve Avrupa'dan ciddi anlamda turist ziyaretçi alıyor. Bunlar arasında baktığımız zaman ilk sırayı Arnavutluk almış. Arnavutluk'tan ciddi bir ziyaretçi Türkiye'ye geliyor. Ardından bakıyoruz Kuzey Makedonya'dan 246 milyonluk bir ziyaretçi gelişi gerçekleşmiş. Ardından Kosova'dan 209 milyonluk bir ziyaretçi girişi gerçekleşmiş. Sırbistan'dan 342 milyonluk bir ziyaretçi girişi Türkiye'ye gerçekleşti. Yine aynı şekilde Bosna Hersek'ten 197 binlik bir ziyaretçi gelmiş. Hırvatistan'dan 77 bin, Slovenya'dan 58-59 bine yakın ziyaretçi girişi gerçekleşmiş. Ama bütün bunların dışında Rusya'ya bakıyorsunuz. Rusya'dan Türkiye'ye gelen ziyaretçi sayısı 6 milyon 700 bin ziyaretçi. Rusya bizim için özellikle turist anlamında son derece önemli. Bakalım Rus turistlerin bu yılki tercihleri yine Türkiye olacak mı? Rezervasyonlarda bunun öyle olacağını şimdiden söylemek mümkün. Devam edelim. Şimdi tabii bunu söylemişken bir de aslında Orta Doğu'dan Türkiye'ye olan ziyaretçi sayılarına da bakalım. Eksik kalmasın. Orada da baktığımız zaman ilk sırada Ürdün var. Ürdün'den Türkiye'ye gelen ziyaretçi sayısı 301 bin civarı. Kuveyt'ten 264 bin civarı. Katar'dan 57 bin. Birleşik Arap Emirlikleri'nden 99 bin. Ama en çok ziyaretçi bize İran'dan geliyor. 3 milyon 270 bin İranlı turist Türkiye'yi tercih ediyor. Yine bakıyorsunuz Irak'tan 968 bin turist Türkiye'yi tercih ediyor. Yine Suriye'den 257 bin gelen olmuş. Arabistan'dan 869 bin turist gelmiş. Burada da Umman'dan mesela Türkiye 86 bin turist gelmiş. Orta Doğu'yu da bu şekilde verelim ama bizim asıl Rusya en büyük pazarımız. Rusya'nın ardından da Türkiye'ye gelen turist sayısında Avrupa ülkelerinde hatırı sayılır bir yeri var. Şimdi dünyanın en güçlü pasaportları. Pasaportunuzun güçlü olması demek o ülkede çok fazla seyahat edebiliyorsunuz. Ülkelerin bir anlamda yurt dışındaki gücünü de temsil eder pasaportun gücü. Burada baktığımız zaman 193 ülkeye programın başında da söyledim. Singapur en güçlü pasaport. Vizesiz girilebiliyor. Yani baktığımız zaman vize giriş imkanı sağlayan ciddi bir pasaport gücü var Singapur'un. İkinci olarak baktığımız zaman Japonya'nın gene vize alma konusunda 190 ülkeyle ciddi bir anlaşması var. Yine üçüncü olarak baktığımız zaman Güney Kore 190 ülkeye, Finlandiya 189 ülkeye, yine aynı şekilde Fransa'ya bakıyorsunuz 189, Almanya 189, İtalya 189 ve Türkiye 114. Şimdi Türkiye pasaportu ile 114 ülkeye vizesiz girilebiliyor. Şimdi pasaportunuz yetiyor, vize almanız gerek yok. İşte Singapur 193 ülkeye vizesiz giriş imkanı sağlayan ülkelerin de başında geliyor. Peki Schengen vize başvuruları özellikle Avrupa Birliği ülkelerine Schengen vize başvurularında bir takım sıkıntılar yaşıyoruz. Bu sıkıntılar işte başvurular reddediliyor, yan randevular zamanında verilmiyor. Buraya baktığımız zaman da Schengen başvurularında Türkiye vatandaşlarının Schengen vizesi için başvurdukları ve yapılan başvurularda red oranının en fazla olduğu ülke Hırvatistan. Hırvatistan 28.8, %28.8 ile Hırvatistan. Sonra Slovenya 27.8, %27.8 ile Slovenya'ya giriş biraz sıkıntılı. Şimdi devam edelim. Bakın Avrupa ülkelerinde durum nasıl? Finlandiya %21.9, İskandinav ülkelerine bakacak olursak İsveç %30.5, Norveç 25.3. Finlandiya, İsveç ve Norveç'e vize başvurusunda bulunduğunuz zaman buralarda bu oranlarda %21, 30 ve 25 oranında red yemişiz. Şimdi Fransa vizesi için başvuranların %14'ü, İspanya vizesi için başvuranların %6.8'i. Burada şunu anlıyoruz, mesela Portekiz vizesi için başvuranların %2.9'u. Eğer Avrupa'ya gidecekseniz Portekiz üzerinden vize aldığınız zaman vize almak daha da kolay. Bu arada İsviçre %11, İtalya %9, yine aynı şekilde Almanya'dan vize almak istediğiniz zaman %20.8 oranında bir red diyorsunuz. Avrupa ülkeleri arasında bir de Romanya var, çok enteresan. Romanya'ya vize başvurusunda bulunanların %3.9'u reddedilmiş. Yani Türkiye'nin en çok vize aldığı, Schengen vizesi aldığı ülkelerin başında Portekiz geliyor. Red oranının en az olduğu 2.9 ve Romanya'da 3.9 oranında bir red başvurusunda bulunuluyor. Özellikle Avrupa'dan yapılan vize başvurularında diyoruz ve şimdi Ekotürk Televizyonu Avrupa temsilcimiz Gökhan Kurtaran'ın yaptığı bir röportaj var. O röportajda özellikle Doktor Martin Wolburg'la yaptığı röportaj. Şimdi bu röportajı ekranlarınıza getirelim. Bu röportajda bakın nasıl bir içerik var, hangi konular gündeme gelmiş. Şimdi hep beraber izleyelim efendim.
Sayın seyirciler, bugün çok önemli bir konuğumuz var sizlerle birlikte. Kendisi Avrupa ekonomisini çok yakından takip eden çok önemli bir ekonomist. Generali Investment'ın baş ekonomisti Martin Wolburg bugün bizlerle. Kendisine Avrupa ekonomisini, global makro ekonomiyi ve tabii Türkiye beklentilerini sormak istiyorum. Welcome Martin. Thank you for accepting our interview request. And I'd like to start first with the crazy world that we're going on, and there's a lot happening since January, and we've seen also a recent hike kind of attempt of Donald Trump on European exports and imports. So
Yes.
what do you think that this could actually bring? We know that it has been delayed and there are still negotiations going, but how do you think the market would see this and the investment climate?
Yes, Gökhan. Yes, I think that's a $100 million question. Actually, what we have seen over the course of the year is persistent and even increasing trade tensions. And I must say, even before the introduction of general tariffs of the 10% and so on, we had this uncertainty. And this uncertainty definitely is in the market. Has already started to affect economic activity, firms, and is dampening activity. On top of this, now comes this latest move of Trump, the threat of 50% tariffs on European exports. Now a little bit of backpedaling again over the weekend. This is definitely contributing to uncertainty. However, will it be as worse as that? We still doubt. I mean, in the end, we think that Trump will need to blink because of two reasons. First of all, he's having his electoral base, which will become increasingly uncomfortable if inflation soars too high. And second, we have actually financial market pressures. If 10-year treasury yields soar too high, it will also put lots of pressure on Trump. So we basically see it as a mean of arm twisting.
And what are the global macroeconomic trends that you have been watching in 2025 so far? How do they influence your investment outlook?
Yes, for sure. The key is for sure the tariffs. And here, our key trend we are closely monitoring is actually the end of US exceptionalism. I mean, US equities, first of all, are for sure in the eye of the storm. So we think actually any trade measures will affect from both sides US equities very negatively. So the time of US equity outperformance is over. And in our asset allocation, we currently even overweight EU equities compared to US equities. Second argument is when it comes to sovereign debt. I mean, on top of this tariff discussion, we are also having this discussion about additional fiscal measures in the US, the tax cuts, which would actually bring the US deficit in the range of 6 to 6.5%, even taking potential tariff revenues into account. And we see the risks even tilted to the upside. So at the moment, we have already something priced in terms of higher term premium. We have negative swap spreads, but is it enough? We think markets increasingly start treating the US as a more normal economy, and more stress might be ahead. So that's the second key ingredient. And related to this, for sure, is this the dollar status as a reserve currency. Is it in jeopardy, especially as Trump continues to hit on Mr. Powell? So this might also undermine ultimately the US dollar's role as a reserve currency. But moreover, we are having a general eye on fiscal stance. I mean, it's not only the US. We have also seen this move in Germany about this fiscal bazooka. And here's a question: is Germany moving from the frugal camp into the spending camp? In the end, the assessment depends on whether the money is spent via loopholes for consumption in the end, or whether it's used for investment and increase in long-term growth in the end. So that's a key question. But coming to our asset allocation, what's definitely true is that this is something which tends to keep Euro area non-core government bond spreads very, very much down and contained. So in our asset allocation, for the reasons just outlined, we like products with high carry, like investment grade credit, but we take a cautious stance on core govies.
And going to the central banks as well, because their monetary policy is very important too. And what are your expectations from ECB and Fed as well, especially considering the inflation risk, because we're talking about the tariffs, and tariffs will be probably passed to consumer products, and it will affect the inflation expectations too.
No, yes, exactly. I mean, we think the Fed is in the worst position among all central banks. I mean, a part of the dual mandate, which it says in any case, there's lots of uncertainty from policymakers' perspective. What will be after this 90-day pause expiring and on tariffs in July, and for China in August, escalation or lasting truce, and how much tariff-induced inflation pressure is already in the pipeline. And what about the just discussed fiscal package of the Trump administration? How will it play out to fiscal, to financing conditions also in the end? In the end, stagflation risks are also very high in the US, and maybe even mounting. So against this backdrop, the Fed is definitely not in a rush to cut rates. We think the Fed will definitely leave rates in restrictive territory for the course of this year, and we look for a cut only from September onwards, maybe. But we clearly see the risks that it might be even postponed or even cancelled. Who knows? Yeah. The ECB, on the other hand, is in a much more comfortable position here. All indicators hint at lower inflation in the end. We have domestic inflation coming down as wage growth starts to moderate. Underlying inflation is going down. We have a stronger euro. We have falling oil prices. All this playing in favor of the ECB. And most of all, any tariff effects, in our view, will be weakening activity and thereby bringing inflation down in the first place. So in the end, the risks for the ECB are much more balanced, and we expect the ECB to cut further, basically to the lower bound of its neutral policy range. So we look for a cut next week, and then see whether a further cut will come in July or September.
And how do you also, like, when we look at the geopolitical tensions as well, like we see that there's a lot going on related with Ukraine, and then we've seen also like the sanctions being lifted to Syria, and there's a lot happening, and there's talks of like possible confrontation with Iran. How do you like view all the developments as well?
No, actually, yes. I mean, it's these crazy times. I mean, geopolitical tensions are very high, and usually they trigger risk-off reactions. And on financial markets and economically, we have usually a strong impact via energy prices. But coming to these conflicts at the moment, it seems that much is priced in. I mean, Western countries have largely tried to strongly reduce their energy imports from Russia. The dire situation in the Middle East in the end remains contained and is unlikely to result in a big regional conflict, ultimately cutting oil supply. And so there's even the risk that these conflicts lose a little bit momentum, which might be positive. Especially a lasting peace agreement in arrangement in the Ukraine might bring oil prices down. But we think this is much too risky to build an asset allocation on this. And on top of that, we also have to keep in mind that there are other risks still outside. Think, for instance, about Taiwan. Any cut in the supply of semiconductors would trigger another round of supply shortages and send shockwaves to the system. So we prefer to look through it and just monitor it at risks.
Yep. And the other thing is, briefly, if you're going to go through like a Eurozone economy, where do you see the potential growth or the resilience in Europe? Like we've seen, I'm going to combine that question a bit like the thing that you mentioned, that Germany has been boosting the defense
Yes.
investments, and we've seen like similar hundreds of billions of euros of like investment in by Eurozone as well, European Union as well. So we are going through this kind of like spend for defense kind of like era, and as
Yes.
much as you can defense. And do you think that would boost the European growth?
Yes, for sure. It's I mean, what we're experiencing is a unique demand boost, traditional demand policy from this perspective. It will definitely boost growth in Germany for sure, especially in the coming years, but also in the other countries, depending also on whether they also adopt such spending measures on military spending. We see euro area potential growth at the moment at around 1.25%. So it will not fully be exploited this year, but next year we are actually looking for 1.3%, basically in line with potential. And thereafter we think that growth will basically remain around this level. But our view on euro area economy is basically based on our assumption, on a benign assumption on the trade war we just discussed. If it was to intensify, we would need to revise. Our baseline scenario is that we basically end up with a general tariff of 10%. Trump will blink. And given this and having this in mind, it does not look too bad. I mean, with fading trade uncertainty, then later towards the year, loan growth already starts to increase, gain momentum in the euro area. We have further ECB rate cuts. And also we have now finally, we see a turn in the consumer sentiment. It had been held down by whatever inflation, a pessimistic outlook on the economy, where in May we actually saw a turnaround. We think this will intensify more, also more as the labor market is very resilient in the euro area, and with then also the positive effects from the German bazooka kicking in towards the end of the year, we are not so pessimistic about euro area growth.
That is very good. At least one good news. And I would like to also ask about like Turkey's current economic trajectory. That how do you view, what are the main risks and opportunities for investors in Turkey? We know that had been a turbulent time around March, and there have been quite happening
yes.
But do you kind of perceive that is kind of easing or getting better long term? How do you view it?
Yes, I mean, for sure. Exactly. I mean, we think that Turkish growth with 3% is not so bad compared to the euro area. So we are actually looking for 3% for this at next year. And thereafter, we are looking to an acceleration in the area of 3.5%. 3.5%. But our assumption is that actually these challenges currently the country is facing, namely weak currency, still very high inflation, and depleted currency reserves, that it will be resolved. For us, the key factor to watch is that the central bank has a possibility to just do its job in a responsible manner, helping to bring inflation down. So then in the end, we are also looking for key rate cuts towards the end of the year. A little bit, this will also help. But from an investor perspective, we for sure, we are very aware of any events that could trigger another round of unordered weakening of the lira, because also more Fitch warned recently that lira volatility could negative impact on the bank's capital ratios and also offset a little bit the positive rating trajectory Turkish financial institutions are having currently. So that's a little bit our concern. But otherwise, we see the country in a good position. And I mean, there are also very good opportunities. For instance, if you take a look at the tech sector, it's emerging as a tech startup hub for fintech, e-commerce, and things like that. That's not looking too bad. And I mean, also Turkey still, I think, exporting the bulk of its energy, 80% more or less, and mostly fossil fuels. So with energy transition actually also taking place, gaining momentum, I think there are also good investment opportunities.
And the other question I'd like to ask is that's my final question, is that we've seen recently, like the Turkey has been developing a lot of like its defense industry, like heavily, and it has actually performed pretty well. And we've also seen its agreement recently, like a Turkish defense company with Leonardo, for example, they had an agreement too. But around the same time, European security comes into the question as well recently, with recent talks of NATO as well. And now we're seeing quite a big chunks of investments and kind of initiative from Europe to build its own defense systems. Do you think there could be some opportunities for Turkey or like some common projects, joint projects in the future?
No, I think, yes, I think definitely. I mean, well, if I got it right, the latest discussion is about the NATO target of 5% defense spending, and I think it makes sense for countries to cooperate. So I'm not a military economist. I don't know about the details, who provides which and what and how it fits together. But in general, I mean, Germany is Turkey's largest trading partner. And with Germany will definitely increase its purchases in military spending, and this spills over definitely for also in trade with Turkey with regard to intermediate goods, machinery, construction materials, for instance. And I think this will definitely lift also Turkish GDP. I mean, we've run some simulations very on a macro level, not so much on specific military goods, but our simulation suggests that Turkish growth could be lifted by 0.1 percentage points next year and 0.3 percentage points in 2027 and 28 due to these German fiscal spending plans.
Oh, that's very interesting. That is going to be kind of the positive outcome of that scenario.
Yes.
On Turkish general growth. And you had repeated your so you've already said your expectations for this year and next year Turkey. Can you please repeat one more time? So I would like to know that.
Yes. We are actually looking for about 3% this at next year, and we see an increase of growth to around 3.5% for the 2 years thereafter, so 27, 28.
So with the last part you've said that it could be even upgraded further with the boost of the German spending.
Yes, for sure. The risks are on the upside, and yes.
That is very good. Thank you very much. It has been a great interview. Thank you for your insights and very valuable contribution.
Thank you. Pleasure was on my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much.